things were really difficult. And Japan facilitated people moving from the cities to these weekend retreats in the forest, measured their cortisol levels, measured their heart rate variability, and found that this was incredibly healing.
Wow.
This was lowering, reducing their symptomology.
Welcome to the Sacred Everything. I'm Travis Redtail, your host, and I've been asking, how do we heal society? How do we regain harmony with the planet? I'm inviting you to explore the practical and the pleasureful ways that we can transform ourselves, empower our communities, and catalyze a revolution of regenerative life in our neighborhoods and beyond. I'm interviewing folks from across the globe who are experts and pioneers making big changes in everything from our food system to mental health, from the circular economy to community singing. If you believe that a brighter future is possible, you're going to love the Sacred Everything. Erika, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Welcome to the Sacred Everything.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for gathering us.
Thanks for joining the circle.
Yeah.
Today, I'm really excited to talk about this topic that sometimes we call mental health. Sometimes we call it emotional regulation. Sometimes we call it trauma and trauma healing. And with you, as a dear friend and a professional who's trailblazing in the world of psychology and psychiatry out there, I really want to dig down on what the heck is going on in this world, in our minds. Are there physiological things that contribute to our mental health crises? Is it all in our mind? Can we heal these crises? Is it childhood trauma? Is it chemicals? Like what is going on? Because apparently 1 in 4 people in this world are on psych meds. I mean, in America, in developed nations, and so I, having had a very long journey with my mental health and still on it, and understanding some dynamics around around the context that we grow up in and how we act, I want to pick your brain today. And I want you to open us up with a quote or a prayer or something that grounds the divine energy here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking for that. One thing that I've really appreciated and found a lot of grounding and care for my own body is to take a few breaths slowly. This was inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh. And as you breathe in, remind yourself that you're breathing in. Just a gentle reminder, as sort of gently and compassionately as you can, letting yourself know that you're breathing in, as if you were consoling a child or an elder, a loved one. And as you exhale, you do the same. So it might sound like, right now, I know that I am breathing in. And on your exhale, right now, I know that I am breathing out. There's so much uncertainty in this world. And it's not a problem to be solved, but this really small way we can bring some regulation to our body, to our mind, to find some continuity.
Wow.
Yeah.
The power of the breath.
Yeah.
The magic of the breath. The yogis call it prana.
It's a prana.
The vital energy moving through the body. Thank you for that. Is that something that you would do with one of your patients? You would just have them breathe? Is that a way that we can provide therapy and mental health services to people, is just tell them to breathe.
Yeah, James Nestor's all about this. He wrote a book recently called Breathe, and he highlights how there's no money in the research. The science of breath.
You can't turn it into a drug.
I just want to be distracted by nature for a moment.
Okay.
There is a hawk that just flew up and is it's just landed in a tree right near us, and that's one thing that I will always take a moment for in a session, letting us be distracted by nature without shame or guilt. Let us be inspired by what's around us.
Yeah.
And I always invite that. And I definitely start sessions with some mindfulness and some breath work. And I always ask, folks if they want to participate in that, and if they have a grounding practice that is comfortable to them, that we set time aside for that. And many times it feels good for people to be led in something new. But we always set aside that time, and it's really valuable.
Wow. Yeah. I'm hearing that the body and like the eyes with the distraction with nature, the awe and the wonder of nature, and the body with the breath, and like getting into the body is a critical part of your practice. And I want to talk more about that. I want to say a quote too.
Let's hear it.
Okay. I want to say a quote too. And this is from Dr. Gabor Mate. And it's something that I want to ask you about later is definitely about Dr. Gabor Mate's work, because he's all about how in childhood we get trained to suppress our emotions. And this comes up with, my yoga teacher, Prem Baba. He talks about how the current paradigm of parenting is that we withhold love from the child so that they will behave appropriately. Or rather, that's how the child perceives it. And so perhaps if those two guys are right, we just need two of them to be right. Like, we're all walking around suppressing our emotions so that we can please our metaphorical and our archetypal parents, like, which we've become ourselves, or our authority figures, or the people that help us make money so we can survive. It's very much about belonging. Dr. Gabor Mate says, we think that children act, whereas what they mostly do is react. Parents who realize this acquire a powerful tool. By noticing their own responses to the child rather than fixating on the child's responses to them, they free up tremendous energy for growth.
Wow. Let's take a moment, because I've heard him speak and it's incredible. His work is incredible. His reflections are so needed. And as you finished that quote, I just thought of our parents. I just like invited them in. This picture of your mom and dad. You told me some stories about them and my parents. And as I did that, there was this thought of their parents and their parents. And so then I saw them as children and the potential for growth. This potential for growth that we don't allow ourselves, especially in the parenting process, because there's the strain and a lack of attunement. And attunement is this ability to be present with what is without trying to change it. So when you hear the child crying and you notice fear and you notice the tension arise in your body,
right?
And you want to feel better. You want to feel better, and
the parent wants to feel better.
Yes.
The parent wants the kid to feel better, but the parent can't dissociate the kid's fear from their own.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're in a store, and there are people watching, and it's overstimulating already, and you want to get out of there, and you need, and the child is suffering, and so in that moment, we withhold.
Wow.
And we're withholding from ourselves too.
Sure. Yeah, because the parent at that point probably wants to cry too. Yeah, 40 minutes to TJ Maxx on a busy highway, and then
Ooh.
a screaming 4-year-old in your cart, and you're like, these
Mm.
fluorescent lights, and there's way too many handbags to choose from. So you're saying that Dr. Gabor Mate's theories in your mind are needed in this time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to be able to give ourselves more space for growth.
Wow. Give ourselves space for growth. And what does that look like? We're really getting into it. You haven't even introduced yourself, but let's
I love
hover
it.
on it.
Okay.
What does it look like to give myself space for growth?
So if we want to, if we rewind and we return to that quote, if a child receives attuned, connected parenting, then I'm kind of it's not as if we're not just because we're talking about dynamic here between the parent and child. So you're asking a question about the parent,
sure,
and what does that look like,
right?
But it's a feedback loop.
Okay.
So let's start with breath. It looks like a breath.
Okay.
Taking a breath. I'm not trying to stop this emotion from happening.
In the child. Okay.
Reminding yourself that.
Yeah.
That's not the goal.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yes, this child is suffering and wants this thing and is upset, but I'm not trying to cut that emotion out right now.
Right.
But they've got to regulate. So I also have to regulate. And that's where you go. You don't go to reason right away. Right.
Right.
So you're taking a breath. You're shaking it out.
Shake it
You're
out.
Stretching.
Yeah.
You're sighing. You're singing. I don't know. Do what you need to do, right? Take a minute, tap, give yourself a hug.
Yeah. It could be a millisecond.
It could be a millisecond. This child might be witnessing this too, but they're definitely witnessing your regulation.
Right.
And you're going to respond to that. They're going to hear your breath too.
Wait, is that the growth that Gabor Mate's talking about? It's like the
right?
growth is that the child needs to witness the parent regulate, because we're going to get stressed out too. Whoa. Now I just want like a super regulated parent to follow me around now that I'm 37 and I get stressed out on work trips and stuff and I just want to throw a fit every time I want to throw a fit.
Yeah.
So that I can teach myself how to regulate, because I did get it and I didn't. I'm kind of guessing, because his theory is so pervasive and so many people connect with it, that it's like most people just haven't received this regulation training from their parents, basically through the millennia of human development. I think we're talking about like the cutting edge of human evolution. We're not talking about people being bad parents. We're talking about like, what can we do to become better as a peoples now that we know that there's such a direct correlation between like early childhood treatment and this growth mindset and all the effed up stuff going on in the world right now. That's what I think about. I think about people staying in jobs that they don't like, and a monetary system that is built on, extracting human capital. And I believe systems like that come out from need and people trying to do their best. But when traumatized thinkers do their best, they're going to build traumatized systems or trauma-induced systems.
Right.
All right. This is too good already. It's too good already, but we don't know who you are yet, Erika. So what I want to do is I want to know what's the practice. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and what's the practice how are you rewilding the mind? Because that's the name of this episode. You rewild the mind. And I think the way that you practice mental health counseling, therapy, whatever you want to call it, is unique, and it is the vanguard. I really believe in it because I've tried lots of alternative therapies, and I'm really a big fan of the way that you're taking on the therapeutic practice. So what do you do? Who are you? How did you come to this place?
Thanks. Your initial invitation, who are you? I thought to myself, it doesn't matter. Like, that's not what matters right now. Like, what matters is what we were talking about. it was the discussion, it was the engagement, it was the collective. And I don't mind returning to myself and to my story, because I think stories are so important. So
Yeah.
I don't mind introducing myself from in that way. I am a mental health nurse practitioner, psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and traditionally that role includes diagnosing and prescribing psychotropic medications. It includes some amount of counseling, supportive counseling. Unfortunately, in the current model of healthcare, those visits usually are between 15 to 20 minutes. It's not a lot of time for deep connection. And
That's for when somebody is getting a re-up on their medication.
yeah, that
This
would
is
be
a
a follow-up
psychiatric, a
appointment,
follow-up
probably.
appointment. Okay.
I'm
How you
just kind of
feeling? Is it
guessing.
working for you? Okay.
Yeah. I came to this work. I went through, I guess, a sort of, I don't know what's a good word to describe it. Through the fire, kind of got prepared in this certain way. And I chose this career, this field, because I noticed the suffering in myself and in others. And it was a clear way for me to get into the trenches.
Wow.
Yeah, of what was happening, what is happening. I found myself at a period of my life searching and struggling and suffering, and I found solace, like I have many times in my life, by the river, in the mountains here, Pisgah forest. Every day, went to the same place, laid my face on the moss, bathed in the river, walked. And it was during these days that I recognized how there was nothing, there was no medication, there were no codes, there were no diagnostic codes that could really encapsulate what was happening for me and what I felt was happening for others. And it was during these, this was 2019. And when I passed my boards and it came time for me to look for a job and decide how am I going to serve, it was clear to me I can't sit and prescribe these medications and enter in diagnostic codes. There are people that will do that and do that, but I recognize that wasn't my calling and my path.
Right.
So now I work for integrative practice, psychiatric practice. I make sure that I prioritize connection, nature connection, time outside, enough time for people to be heard. I make sure there's a cushion before and after my appointments so that we allow for the natural unfolding of our emotions and our experience. That's a little bit of what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing that you had like a decision point in your career. You were either gonna do it sounded like a mechanical version of psychotherapy, which was like, we're going to make an assessment, we're going to prescribe the medications, and we're going to put a code in a computer, which is I've been through that. If anybody knows me personally, I've been on SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and I felt great. I didn't change anything in my life that was bringing me suffering. So I actually I didn't feel great at the end of it. And I can imagine, see, I had talk therapy along with that. So that was an interesting path for me, but I got to say, it felt mechanical.
Mm.
Having somebody listen to me in the way that I was listened to and prescribe the way, it did feel mechanical. And it sounds like you didn't want to be part of that. And that it may really work for some people, but it wasn't going to be the way that you were going to work. And that, so you chose a path that felt more intimate, more humane, more centered around the patient. What do you call them? Do you call them patients?
Mm. Yeah, I call them patients or clients,
Clients.
um, individuals,
Humans with
humans,
problems just like
right?
me.
Yeah.
And so you
Call them by their name.
yeah, you call them by their name. So Joe or Sally or Janet.
Yeah.
And you make time. You make time within the prescribed window, but a little bit before and after, just to say, hey man, if this person is breaking down crying, I'm just going to hold them and be there. And you're saying that being out in nature and working with the body, working with breath is really important for you. And I'm curious, it sounds like you came to that intuitively. Like you were out in the Pisgah forest and you were like, this is the medicine I need. Other people probably need this medicine. Are there other practitioners doing this? Is there a body of work that substantiates the efficacy of this? What's going on with
Mm.
nature and the body and what you're doing? Because it
Mm.
sounds like the type of therapy I want to be
I know there are associations for wilderness therapy, nature therapy. There are um, associations for forest bathing practitioners. There is a body of work. There is research. Um, if you look at Japan, these people were pushed into the cities, became more depressed,
in.
symptoms of distress. Things were really difficult, and Japan facilitated people moving from the cities to these weekend retreats in the forest, measured their cortisol levels, measured their heart rate variability, and found that this was incredibly healing.
Wow.
This was lowering, reducing their symptomology. And so that's I'm using that as an example, but of course there is research. How does that compare to the research funded by pharmaceutical companies? Well, you know the answer.
We know the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I'm hearing that there's science fact around the impacts of getting people in nature and having a more calm environment. And mm, wow. And I think about as an urban planner, like the increasing urbanization of the
Mm.
world. 70% of the world's population will be living in cities by 2050. Yeah, and we're at about 8 billion
Wow.
global population now, and demographers say we're going to cap out anywhere between 9 and 11, which
Mm.
most people think we're going to like just, breed this planet out. But but sperm counts and fertility counts are going way down,
Yeah.
chemical toxicity, radiation from phones. There was a study just yesterday that came out that was radiation from phones reducing sperm count in men.
Mm.
And so I think, is there enough nature for all of us to access? How do we take, the most dense? I've
Mm.
been in the most dense cities on earth, right? Like the first city I ever went to was not New York City. It was Hong Kong. It
Mm.
was Shanghai, Beijing. It was, Mumbai, these like insane
Mm.
mega cities with like tens of millions of people in them.
Yeah.
And in this idea that like a public park can cut it is tough for me to stomach, because when I lived in Boston, I was next to the US's oldest and most beautiful public parks, and it
Mhm.
was really tough because there was all of the inhumane things of the world, like showing folks that were houseless, right? And they were really
Mm.
struggling.
Mm.
And it's not the density of nature that's like
Mm.
all sensory relieving. There's cars, there's horns, there's ambulances, there's all kinds of stuff that are
Mm.
triggering. I mean, I don't care who you are, an ambulance siren, even if you're totally desensitized to it, there's still a trigger happening in your body.
Totally.
Is that true?
Totally.
Am I crazy? I shouldn't ask you that.
I had a let's see, a therapist while I was in school. One time she said that she's actually never seen anyone who was crazy. She said that. She was like, that would be like seeing a unicorn. And I say, I've never seen a unicorn.
Wow.
She really didn't use that word.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm not really, I don't, want to focus on the rhetoric or syntax of that word, but no, yeah, you're not crazy. Yeah. And as you were speaking, it was a real reminder of the reality of the predicament that we're in.
Right.
Because when I speak to my mom, grew up in a city. Her family lived in the city, and it was loud. Yeah, and it was difficult to get into a peaceful place, to get to a place that was so quiet and serene, the density that you spoke about. Yeah, it was really difficult.
Yeah,
so it's not the answer.
Right.
Maybe it is.
Maybe going out into nature and breathing is the answer.
Maybe we do abandon the cities.
Well, I mean, what it brings to mind is folks that are struggling monetarily.
Yeah.
They need to work 2 jobs. Mm-hmm. They are stuck in a housing market that is increasingly more expensive. The wage equity, especially in this country, is so disparate that we have not had as many hyper wealthy people and hyper poor people since the Gilded Age, since like the 1890s to the 1920s. We're talking about boatloads of immigrants with zero cash in their pocket and gajillionaires building railroad empires. That's where we are today. It's literally the same. You can look at Robert Putnam, and I can't remember her name, the co-author, but it's The Upswing, and it talks about how America kind of came together in the 60s, and we had more wage equality. We had greater unity around church groups, greater unity around civil rights movement, and all the social indicators and the financial and the economic indicators that they have about unity at that time have fallen back to Gilded Age, industrial era levels. And so I think about the First Peoples. I think about this group, the Kalahari Bushmen. They're in the southern part of the African continent. I think Botswana down to northern South Africa. And they their input, their 5 senses is like nature and the sky and sounds and each other. Like that's what the first people had to the input of their computers. And then you and the output, what is the output? They're pretty much a communitarian society. If you have something and somebody has less, they ask you to share it, and you share that. Otherwise, your kind of reputation is ruined. They don't store food. They just know that there's going to be enough because they're foragers. They're hunter and foragers. And okay, maybe it's a really specific context, but these people haven't stored food in 40,000 years. They've shared everything they had with each other for 40,000 years. Like, it's possible, people, because it's happening today. But that's with really specific inputs to the human machine. It's like fresh air, clean water, cool breezes. Maybe some lions might eat you. And then you come over to where we are at in society right now, and it's the sirens, it's the economic stress, it's the reputation on, I don't know, social media. There's so many dimensions of distraction and input. It's like our 5 senses have to have at least 20,000 times as stimuli as the first peoples. They're not the first peoples, they're the now peoples, the San people. And I think, well, if the input is nature and peaceful sensory input, and the output is communitarian, sharing, faith in the providence of nature, like there is enough. You put in more input, more chaotic input, like this plane flying overhead and the sirens that were going off before, what's the output going to be? A scarcity driven economy, scarcity driven resource consumption, soon to be water wars in this world, actual war happening in the Gaza Strip right now. I mean, we're uh, my father's an engineer. I love simple models, input complicated, output complicated and messy and chaotic. Right. Input simple and peaceful, output simple and peaceful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for summing that up and inviting the reality of our world, the grief of what is,
to
this conversation. And then the question that arises in my mind is, where do we go? What now? How do we? And I was listening to Stephen Jenkinson talk, and I really appreciate his perspective on our generation's search for ways, solutions. That's your primary tool in your toolbox. And so we're, grinding our gears. How?
What do you think about that? Should we be grinding our gears? How?
My mom always said the birds are not wondering where they're going to eat, what their meal is going to be, what they're going to wear, right? This is an old proverb.
Yeah. So I see. So what you're saying is that even in the search for mental health, even in the search for more peace, we're still making it a really active, intense effort.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So how we talk about the dilemma perpetuates the dilemma.
Yeah.
This disorder. This is rising. This is happening.
The mental health crisis.
We're talking about it in that way, not in what other way, like you said, the input, the sounds, the senses, the birds that are flying by, the water. We're not praying with the water that we drink in the morning. We're not smelling a tree as we walk by. That's the input that we have to work with.
Right.
We have a lot. You're right. It's complex. We have a lot more than that.
Well, as somebody who thinks about what we can do about it all the time and probably drives a lot more complexity in my life than I need to, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, the purpose of this podcast and the ideas that drive this concept of revillaging our street and recreating tribe in our life, and in the necessities of the simplicity that we're talking about. The body of work that I've been generated is I don't know the title yet, but I know the tagline, which is how to meet our needs simply and change the world. And my journey over the last couple of years has been asking, what's noise and what's signal? How much of my time building up my career did I spend worrying about all this stuff versus if it felt good or not? How much time did I spend on status and clothes and these kinds of things versus building up my intuition? And I see a world where we have time to listen to each other when somebody's having a hard day, maybe even a stranger. Maybe at work or on the street, you see somebody crying because people in that world are comfortable enough to cry in public because, good Lord, this human experience is a little crazy. I don't know if it is for you, but it is for me. And I could cry on any given day. I mean, stuff happens. People die. You don't get what you want. It's like that myth of emotional regulation, I think, is only as good as your ability to take that breath. And so in this future, where every street is a village, I feel really supported. And because I feel really supported, I actually stop bringing so much stuff into my life, either to validate my identity. I stop bringing in I don't know, as fancy of travel or elaborate things to make me feel good. Like my happiness is not only coming from within, but it's coming from within because I feel the safety that my emotional security is supported in an area. And you know this well, but I'm a believer in the technologies of belonging, right? Silence, sharing silence together, song. You don't even need instruments. You have the most beautiful instrument on earth already. You're born with it. It's your voice. Dance. You really don't even need music to dance. You can just have movement.
Totally.
And what's the fourth technology of belonging? Grief. And grief, dance, song, and silence. And in this world where your street is a village, there's probably a little something going on most of the time. There's probably a dance happening. There's probably a song thing happening. There's probably a grief circle. There's probably moments of silence. And it's all interwoven in a life that allows me to have my nervous system relaxed. So in lieu of the nature outside, we're becoming more comfortable with the nature inside. And I've always had this theory that like humans are just more evolved trees that are so gorgeous, you know? And it's like, I like humans, like Ram Dass talks about this, how we don't go around judging trees. Well, that's a fat one and that's a skinny one and that's that, you know? And I have all my conditionings, but when I look at anybody's face, especially if I can catch their eyes for more than 30 seconds, I'm just in awe.
I know.
What a creature, you know, what a creature. And so I'm thinking like the greater density that we build our cities, the greater heart opening we're going to need to see that we are nature walking around all the time. You know, if I had the right, not the right, but the permission, if I felt the permission to just gaze at your hair and be like, that's as beautiful as the leaves on trees, which it is, Erika.
Thank you.
Beautiful hair. Maybe that would satisfy a bit, you know, maybe life is a little slower. And I'm saying all this because there's a bigger picture, right? This is like, this makes us consume less and we drive less. Like there's a whole reason why we would start to slow down. But on the mental health side, we need something to calm us down. If we're going to live in this world, we need something to regulate. And so, yeah, I'm feeling like people are the nature that we need.
We are. One of our friends made this beautiful bumper sticker. The spaceship we've been waiting for, right? Thanks to Mason for that artwork. And I love that because it reminds me of what you were saying, that within us we have the technology and capacity for collective and community healing and emotion. These diagnoses are not just ours,
right?
You know, they're not just individual pathologies. They are collective, environmental, communal challenges. And what I hear you saying is that when we can shift and we can look at what it is, what our capacity is within to heal together and to not internalize or individualize our symptom profile, that we're not even sure really,
right?
Because we haven't experienced that.
What would that world look like?
Right?
Yeah.
What would it feel like? What would happen to my depression? What would happen to my anxiety? I often ask clients to sing with me, to move, to sit in silence. Or the Gabrielle Roth quote, "When did you last dance?" And she's attributing these questions to indigenous cultures.
Right.
Instead of asking, "How are you depressed?" You know, when's the last time you felt anxious? When's the last time you sang? When did you stop being comforted by silence or solitude?
Yeah.
You know, when did you stop being, you know, invigorated by a story? And those are the questions that I would want to be asked, that I would want to ask a village.
Sure.
When's your next dance? If I walk in, you know, when will you be dancing?
Right.
What's the song that we sing? I just got back from Denmark, and it was a beautiful trip. And my mom and I were sitting down, and there were some people from Norway and some people from Denmark and Sweden. And my mom asked, "What's the blessing song that we're going to sing?" Like,
Yeah.
before we eat, let's do that together.
Right.
Let's not miss that
Right.
opportunity.
Right. Oh.
And we know too, this is like toning our vagal nerve. So if you want to like some physiology here.
What's the science fact behind singing in mental health?
Well, there's breath, right?
Okay.
You've got to be breathing to sing. And you don't have to be thinking too much about your breath.
Right.
So for those people who are like, please don't ask me to breathe.
Right.
I don't want to overthink my breath, don't have maybe a breath practice, but
then song is good for
song
them.
is great.
Okay.
Because you're breathing naturally without too much.
And what about the vagal nerve? What is that?
Oh, let's tone it. Let's tone this response to this nerve that helps us flee when we need to flee, helps us fight when we need to fight, and helps us digest our food. Helps us connect to others.
Wow.
Let's make sure this isn't all, frazzled, so that we're not responding in a way that's not conducive with the environment or the situation.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? Like, we breathe, we sing, we meditate, we touch each other. We take time, in nature. We are silent.
And that's good for the vagus nerve?
This is great for the vagus nerve.
I want to sing and be in nature and have a best friend next to me holding my hand or hugging me.
Yeah.
That's what I want all the time.
Right. And so what I hear you saying is, okay, this isn't our current reality.
Yeah.
We don't have space for this.
Yeah.
So, and that's been really challenging for me to say, I'm going to prioritize these things in my own life. And what is that going to look like at work?
Yeah.
How many clients am I going to be able to see?
Right.
How much will I be paid?
Right.
Will I make enough?
Right.
But I'm prioritizing my time and my health and my wellness.
Wow.
And that's really, I'm swimming upstream, a bit. And it's okay, because I realized that this is what I was called to do.
Right.
And I find some solace there. And I find some solace when I see a young child running through the woods. And in the middle of the session, they go, like, "Can we run?" And I'm like, "Yes." And I think to myself, I'm so glad they're not inside right now. They're not restricted.
Right.
That they feel that they can express themselves. They can ask me if they can run.
Yeah.
What a natural way for humans to express themselves.
Yeah. And I've been on walks with you in the woods before. You run. You just take off, and I find you 10 feet up a tree. And it's like, I've never been on a walk. Honestly, I've never been on a walk like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm hearing you speak about your own journey, which is that I'm going to walk the talk. I'm really going to walk the talk. I am going to prioritize hours a day in nature. I really am going to let my inner child run free. And that is not copacetic with the way that the world is right now. The world is a lot of economic burden. The world is a lot of like work for the monetary gain so that we can put food on the table and have a roof over our head. So there's something that you're invoking, which is like the systemic paradox that we have, like the need and like all the healing we want all the healing. A quarter of Americans are on the psych meds and they want the healing. They're going to somebody for the healing, and those are expensive psych meds. So you have to work more to do to maintain this level of mental stability. I'm using air quotes with that, to chemically induce your brain to feel okay, which may be the problem in the first place. Is the structures that we're in all the time, being the structures of the systems of work that we have to do, but the physical structures that we have. There are a lot of people sitting in cubes right now, a lot of people behind checkout counters with fluorescent lighting overhead and no views of the natural world around them. And I'm hearing that this future, I'm hearing that this future could be like a child asking to go run. And maybe we need to ask ourselves, what's my version of running today? What do I need? What do I need to get to
Mm.
scratch that itch?
Mm.
To feel free like that child.
Yeah. I was sitting under a beech tree. I spent some time, I called it a vigil, and some people referred to these times as vision quests, or uh, call it by whatever name
Yeah. Yeah.
you should. But for me, it was a vigil, and I spent a couple days by myself, and I spent it under a beech tree, and there was a lot of rain, and I had a shelter, I had a covering, but I watched this beech tree in the rain. The water, if you know beech tree, the bark is very smooth, the water runs down the bark. And I received this very clear message about where do these medicines end up? What is the process? How are they created? What money goes into them? Like the questions arose, and they washed down the bark. And what I was left with was this clear calling: you do not have to continue to prescribe these medicines as a band-aid for what we've created and what we are experiencing as a culture. And I don't say that. I say that with a lot of compassion and understanding, because I too was prescribed medication when I was really young.
Wow.
And I feel the grief of that as I say it. And I think we're doing our best, right? We know we do we're trying to get our needs met in tragic ways, right?
Yeah. The Marshall Rosenberg
Right.
quote. Yeah, we're all just trying to get our needs met and try. Nope, nobody's bad on this earth. They're just trying to get their needs met.
Right. So these meds came from that. But I received that clear messaging. Okay, that's not the path. That's not your path now.
Right.
And it's not your path for the clients that you see.
Right.
Given the time that you're with them.
Right.
That doesn't mean I see people on medicine. I don't ask them, are you on medicines? I don't think this is going to work out. It's not that way. But I make it pretty clear that we have an hour and 15 minutes. This time won't be used in that way.
Right.
And of course, if they have concerns, they have a question, and we can work with that. We can invite that into our time, and that's the benefit. And I think I am grateful for the education that I've received, so that I can meet people in that way when there's a concern, or when they just want to be heard. Right. They want to express some grief, as you were doing. Like, yeah, that was great. Like you mentioned, the SSRI made you feel great. Like, I want to hear these stories from my clients. Yeah. I want to hear when they felt numb. Right. I want to hear when they had a hard time coming off a medicine, that they weren't sure that there was going to be withdrawal symptoms. Right. They didn't know. They were surprised by that. They had a side effect that was like really uncomfortable. Right. Yeah, I want to hear those stories, but also I want to prioritize song and silence and dance and connection with the natural world.
I feel like we should take just like a quick safety moment to talk about folks that may be considering coming off their meds or whatever, right? Because I did that, and I did that in a very structured way under like pretty close supervision, and that's because I read that it could have really intense effects on you, maybe like psychotic or lasting damage or something. So do you want to speak to that a little bit? Because I feel like we're getting in this territory, like the message that we're saying is that we think that there's another way. But I think somebody listening with a different lens of like, I want that other way right now, may jump to a conclusion. So this is a safety moment in my mind. What would you say in that instance when somebody does, what would you say to me? Right? Say, you are my therapist. I said, you know what? I think I'm done with this. What do you say to me?
Yeah, you're at a pivotal point. You're at a point where you're questioning and you're wondering, is this the way that I want to go?
Yeah.
And what else is possible? And so when we want to make a change, often it feels, when we're inspired to make a change, it makes sense that we want to do it quickly.
Yeah.
Cut the ties,
Yeah.
turn 180 degrees, 360 degrees, just like transform our life. And I would say, go in the way, like the way you went in is the way we go out.
Yeah.
And do so gently. Be really compassionate. Make sure you have support.
Yeah.
That you can speak about it to someone. And of course, my suggestion is do so with someone who can guide you in that process, who understands the body and the mind, who can guide you in appropriate taper and transition.
Right.
Because there's vulnerability.
Yeah.
When we shift chemically.
In
any way.
Sure.
People will say this of a new diet. Sometimes it gets harder before it gets easier. Right. When you've cut certain foods out of your diet or something like that. So yeah, I want folks to feel supported when they make these changes. I want them to go slowly and to have the guidance of a professional. I know that's not always possible for some people, but yeah.
I'm hearing delicacy. Like I look at nature, I look out, as the sun is setting, I think there's nothing really fast happens in nature. We see a volcanic eruption or we see a hurricane come through and we see the peak of the energy, but that has been building up for weeks or months or millennia, years. Yeah. And so in my mind, what you're saying is, I want to take people to nature and I want to get them re-rooted in nature and I want to help them express themselves so authentically. And if they do want to make a shift in their practice, it also should be like nature. It should be delicate. It should be gradual. It should be something that goes by this natural law that nothing really happens overnight.
Totally. And let the patterns of nature support your transition. So I talk about titration a lot.
Oh, what's that?
Like, let's titrate. Let's increase your connection and your time outside and the way that you relate as you maybe shift a pattern in your life. So when people come to me and they're drinking a lot of alcohol, there's a habit, a chemical dependency or misuse, they want to shift. Well, let's do that. Let's slowly titrate something else. It's not necessarily replacing, though some people might see it that way, and it might feel that way.
Right.
But it's a way of creating more resilience for the mind and the body.
Yeah. You're shoring up the support systems. And there's been points in my journey where I spent so much time in nature and honestly it didn't do a whole lot for me. And I think this universe of trauma healing that folks in our generation and younger generations are so like adamant about, like we want to get rid of these traumas in our body, goes to this body of work, from what's the doctor's name? The Body Keeps the Score.
Bessel van der Kolk. Yeah.
Bessel van der Kolk. And to me, it's the most fascinating concept that if something happened to me in this lifetime and I had a physical, like a really traumatic incident and I had a physical knee-jerk reaction to it, that emotion could be stored somewhere in my body. Is that how it works? Is that what van der Kolk is talking about? Do I have like that girl that broke up with me in 8th grade and I like had like a rib get out of place that week? Is that where that emotion lives? Is it in that out of place rib? Like how does the body store emotions?
Right. Have you heard the issues in our tissues?
Issues are in our tissues.
It's a cute one. Wow. Yeah. So the age of the brain, right? It's like 90s. I mean, this is really, it's pretty new, it's pretty fresh.
Yeah.
And I think Bessel's work is really valuable, really important. He's scratching the surface, and then we've had others. Thankful for my grandmother's hands. I recommend that book. Another perspective on trauma, and but yeah, okay. So your question is it how is it stored?
Or is it stored? Is trauma stored in the body?
I think it's more. I would say yes. And if this, we can go back to the vagal nerve and the vagus nerve, and we can think about how when our amygdala fires and we are reminded, we have a memory. How does the body? Where does the body tense? Where are we constricted? When do we hold our breath? Yeah, and what parts of our body, because of where we were at that time, what we were doing, why is it that someone says, "Oh, my back. Oh, it's a pain in my ass," or like, we have these phrases, and why? I don't know. It's because we sit too long. I don't know. But I'm curious that I'm curious. I'm curious about exactly how and why we try to. Why is it that we have to figure out? We're not dissecting our bodies. We're not though. In some cultures, maybe we do sort of open up and find where that grief is, and that's sort of, metaphorical, and maybe not.
Maybe
Maybe also
not.
spiritual.
So you're saying that my 8th grade breakup isn't stored in my right lower rib?
I'm saying there's only one way to find out.
I mean, what the theory means to me and what's been happening is that I have exactly what you said. Like, I'll have this shortness of breath thing come up in really specific situations.
Yeah.
And then a good friend will hold space for me, and I'll like cry like a blithering baby for an hour and a half. And I'll remember something that happened to me when I was like a child that I totally forgot. And it'll somehow, I don't feel that shortness of breath anymore.
Right.
I mean, like, my body changed, like my reaction to the world changed. I've been carrying that breath thing around for 20 years or longer. And in this, like, for me, it's a lot of it is about tension. It's about where I tense up and why I tense up. And the more that I feel supported in my community to note that pattern and to bring that pattern to a friend and say, hey, I noticed some stuff and I just want to delve into this. Can you hold space for me for like an hour without trying to fix me, and literally just mirroring what I say so that I feel heard and we can go really deep into this. Like, I need a container for me to feel safe to touch the scariest parts, because my understanding about trauma is that we hover around the scariest parts, but unless we really tap it, it's hard to release that trauma. Like, that shortness of breath is everything but the pain. It's like everything leading. It's like the edge of the pain. And I haven't felt safe in my 37 years enough until some very lovely and amazing friends have come into my life to hold space for me to really go to that weird thing that happened when I was like 9 years old. And I didn't really think that was a traumatic incident. I was just playing with my family, and it came up. And so I'm feeling like I have my experience of trauma being stored in the body, in that in the future where maybe we don't have national parks to go walk in 3 hours a day, but we have enough time and ease in our life to say, hey, can you hold space for me right now? Then this ancestral palimpsest of trauma that has been accumulating over millennia could actually start to, instead of accumulate, start to decrease. That's my wish for the world. That's why I think a street that is a village is way more than growing our own food in our front yards and composting and driving less and having music parties in the street or afternoon dances. It's like, it's about us unwinding the accumulated trauma for the entire history of humanity so that we can have more time in our day, We can see colors and live in the world more vibrantly because we're not held back by these little tensions about that thing that happened when I was 9 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
Do you want to live in that world with me?
I do. I want to live in that world with you. I want that for the 7 generations that come ahead of me, and I want that for the generations that have come, that I think about my grandparents. I think about their grandparents. I think about the stories that I heard, and as we sit here today, and I really believe, my prayer is that we sit here, because we came from those ancestors that survived,
Right.
and that we're here because there's 7 generations of healing to
Right.
come. And I think you're right. The body has the blueprint. We were not taught. We come to this world, and the sensations in our body give us clues about what's going on. How are your feet right now? Like, how do your feet feel right now?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
My feet are a little sweaty.
Okay.
I'm wearing slippers, and it's a little too warm for these slippers.
So you feel, I hear you being able to reflect on the temperature, the moisture.
Yeah.
There'll be times where you ask your body, how am I doing? How's my jaw?
Yeah.
And nothing comes.
Yeah.
And it takes a minute. You need to breathe. You need to take some space so you can feel the sensations in your jaw.
Right.
Because those are clues. That's the edge of the trauma response. Those sensations. So we develop a language. We can help others develop that same language so that they can navigate and understand the blueprint of their own body.
Wow. So finding the edge of the trauma response requires us to listen and be aware of when that tension builds in our body.
And I heard you saying, that you were listened to, when you ask a friend to hold space for you.
Right.
And in that listening, in the art of listening, you're receiving that gift, and you're then listening to your body.
Yeah.
So there's, I see the sort of concentric circles of listening, and how that's maybe
I'm
a
listening,
door.
and you're helping me listen, and there's some echo.
I think there's an organization here in town called Seek Healing, and they had listening trainings, and anyone could sign up. And
Wow.
I thought that was really profound, really beautiful.
It's like they're there teaching me how to hold space and listen to somebody else.
Right. Because we're not taught that, and we're not attuned to in that way.
Right.
We're often not listened to.
Right. We're like told to concentrate, but never taught to concentrate. Meditation. We're told to share, but never taught to share. Nonviolent communication. And we're told to listen, but never taught to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm feeling really nourished by this idea that just my experience of crying in somebody's arms is a way to get over my anxiety or my mental health challenges. Like, I'm encouraged. I have been on my mental health journey since like 13. I've been looking at this. Mental health was a big issue in my family growing up. And, 24 years later, I'm getting a little relief by crying in someone's arms. And I really hope that medicine becomes as prominent, if not more, than the contemporary allopathic medicative tracks that we're doing today. And it sounds like you, Erika Belisle, are birthing a really pioneering way to start to address the depths of depression, the depths of anxiety that are really prominent today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to honor the mystery, of how did we get here? Where are we going? And we're so complex. We do contain multitudes, and through my work, in my life, I want to honor that mystery. And so when we aren't able to really accept the unknown, we spin our wheels, trying to name and diagnose and cut out, stop the bleeding. And a lot of times we put the bandages over and then we never get to see what's happening underneath.
I feel that way about sustainability in this world, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about inner sustainability. My work is, I just think we consume too much because we're so traumatized. And instead of changing our lifestyle, we try to make everything green. And that's great. Like I think we need the Band-Aid. I kind of think we probably need the medication because the maturity of the alternatives is very low right now. The maturity of lifestyle transformation is very low right now. But taking our already out of whack consumption and just greening it seems like a Band-Aid solution for me. It doesn't seem like the deepest healing for the wounds that we have in society right now. So I really see your work reflected in the way that my worldview is. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And thank you for sharing your medicine with the world, so connected with nature and being daring enough to walk the talk and to try to regulate yourself for as long as it takes out in the natural environment. This is a daring and challenging thing to do in 2023. And I really hope to hear more about the way that you're changing people's lives for the better in the future.
Thank you so much. Yeah, what an honor to journey with you. And it is, for me, an honor to journey with my clients, to realize that it's not me versus them.
Right.
That we're on this path together.
And if people want to find you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Psychology Today. You can find me at Asheville Integrative Psychiatry.
Yeah.
You may find me on the trail.
You might find me on the trail.
The river. The depth of the sea, maybe.
The depth of the sea. All right. Well, thanks again. Look forward to hearing about your great stories in the future.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah.